you attend the Health and HDFS Internship Conference? So I get this question a lot from students of why should I attend this event? I'm just going to talk to this employer. I'm not going to really get any extra information, or even more importantly, why should I even get an internship just to get my degree? When you talk to me, wherever in a one-on-one setting, the two things you're probably going to hear me say the most are, one, make sure you're connecting with people who are in the field you want to go into, and two, make sure you're getting some type of experience before you graduate. You all are very lucky because you have built-in experience in your curriculum. You all have to do an internship for public health, or if you're in HDFS, you have that required internship. So that's great because you're automatically getting experience. But I always tell students you can take it a step above and beyond, and you can get experience outside of the academic requirement of that class. The reason why internships or any kind of experience helps you, especially when you're applying for graduate school or jobs down the line, is one, it helps you learn more about the industry. When you're an intern, you're probably going to be doing very similar tasks to maybe that of a full-time position. So not only are you gaining knowledge on what kind of day-to-day tasks that you're doing, but you're also developing skills that you can further show in your application materials. You're also seeing if the industry is a good fit. So it does happen that sometimes you go into an internship and you realize, like, you know what, this internship maybe doesn't meet my values, or maybe my skill sets aren't matching, or maybe even this doesn't meet my personality. And that is okay. It is okay to go to an internship and realize it's not a good fit. You're still going to learn a lot of great skills that you can transfer to a different field or maybe a different organization. But it's better to learn that before you graduate versus if you go to a full-time role and didn't get that experience. You may be in that role and then realize, you know what, this wasn't a good fit. Build relationships. So you want to build relationships with people who are in the field or the organizations you want to be in. This is commonly called networking. I don't like to call it networking because I know networking can have a really strong connotation to it. And some people tell me all the time, Donna, I don't like to do that. You know, that's okay. But like anything, you can reframe it and say, but I do like to build relationships. And why it's crucial to build relationships with people who are in the field you're in is because they can give you the insight knowledge into what kind of positions are available maybe in their company or outside of the company in the future. Your supervisor coordinators, they're going to see your work ethic. So as interns, they're going to see your day-to-day of how much are you going above and beyond? How much are you really interested in this field? And that's going to showcase to them, hey, this person is really invested. Let me make sure that I maybe recommend them for a position here, maybe give them some insight into a different field. I like to tell people this story that I actually got my job at UCS because I was a counseling intern. So I got my master's in the counseling program at U of H, and I was a practicum intern in our office. And I always made sure that I tried to get as much information and try different challenges as I could. So if there was a new presentation to do and they offered it to me, I definitely took it, did some research beforehand, did the presentation. Or maybe there was a student population I hadn't worked with and they're like, do you want to try to work with that student population? I would take up those challenges and they noticed that they offered me to apply for the position, and I was able to get it and then become a full-time career counselor. So there is an impact to the internships, but you got to make sure that you're investing that time and energy into it. And lastly, you have to have experience to put on your graduate school application and your job application. So we're first going to talk about graduate school. So I know some of you may be interested in getting MPHs, MBAs, PhDs. With graduate school applications, you have to have experience. While your grades do matter, your experience counts as well, and it's going to show up in different ways. One is going to show up on the application itself. There's going to be a section where you either have to fill out what kind of experiences you've done as an undergrad, or you're going to have to upload your resume and curriculum vitae, and that is reviewed. They want to see what have you done, how do you know that you want to be in this field and continue with your education in this field. Next, recommenders. You may be asked to get letters of recommendation. Your internship supervisor could be a great person to ask, especially if you've done a great job and have a close relationship with them at your internship site. Personal statement. Your personal statement is an essay where you will talk more about your interest in getting that master's, PhD. And you also talk about the experiences or skills that you have that would contribute to that master's or PhD program. Again, that internship could be a great experience to talk about in your personal statement. And you can also showcase skills that you did in your internship that would connect to that program. And most importantly, the interview. So with the interview, sometimes they may ask you specific questions from your application. Hey, tell me more about your internship experience, or tell me about experience as it relates to this program. Again, you're able to pull from your internship experience and talk about that in the interview process. So I know there was one question about like what kind of skills are employers looking for a full-time job, or what kind of skills are marketable for health and HDFS. So this list here comes from NACE. NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They are a national organization who each year they ask employers, they do a survey with them to see what kind of skills are you looking for in employees or new entry-level employees outside of GPA. So it's not factoring in GPA. These are the skills outside of that that they see in their entry-level employees. This list here, it is pretty, we hear a lot of this, I would say, especially with communication skills and problem-solving skills, as the skills that employers want to see more of with students. I know the communication skills is always a challenge because it's really hard, right, to go from texting with your friends, family, to then having to switch to texting or communicating via email with the supervisor or boss. Same thing with problem solving skills. Sometimes you may be in a role where you're given a project, you're given information, but you're also just told, you know what, I'm giving you this information, can you figure this out and then report back to me? So you're having to use this problem solving to figure out that project or whatever task you've been given. So how internships help is that internships give you exposure into these different skills that employers are looking for. And then you're able to build up on those skills. So let's say leadership, for instance, maybe you take an initiative in your internship or your practicum, and then you're able to communicate that to an employer in an interview or in your resume itself. So we can really see that internships, they are vital when you are applying for graduate school or a job search, which is what everyone wants to do after they graduate. So come to the Health and HDFS internship conference, not only if you are in need of an internship right now, but even if you're planning on doing it a semester or two. One, you get to see what employers are hiring or looking for interns, and you could potentially maybe get an internship even before your required practicum or your full-time internship to get further experience to put on your resume and applications. Cool. Any questions so far? The biggest difference between a career fair and information session is that the information session is going to be a more relaxed environment, because instead of you having to go up to the employer and maybe starting those tell me about yourself questions, that elevator pitch, the employer is going to have a certain amount of time to tell you more about their internship or full-time position. This is still interactive, so you can still ask questions and engage with them, but it's more relaxed because you're learning more information and the employer is spending more time talking to you, but you're still having the opportunity to build that relationship and learn more about their opportunities. So the information session is going to be Thursday, November 12th from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. I put a note here, you do not have to stay the full time. As we see on the agenda, there's going to be different sessions. There's going to be a breakout session for HDFS from 1 to 3. And then from 3 to 5 will be the public health information sessions. So you can go to both if you want, but if you're like, no, I only want to go to the public health information sessions, then you can attend from 3 to 5. Now, I'll also be doing a pre-conference presentation from 12 to 12:45. I'm going to be talking about what is an internship and how do I find one. So a lot of the topics that we'll be talking about today, I'll be covering in that same workshop, but you can definitely attend that one if you want a refresher or if you want to learn a little bit more information that I'll be including in that presentation. And the platform will be Zoom. So if you are not that familiar with Zoom, I would make sure that before the event, you create an account, because you can create a free account, and make sure that you log on and get familiar with the settings so that you feel comfortable the day of. So how are the information sessions going to look like? Really, what they're going to look like is that we're going to have different rotations with employers. So we look at the steps. Step 1, you're going to receive the Zoom link the day of the event. We're going to send a conference agenda the week of the event. So with the conference agenda, you're going to see which employers are coming at which times. And then you also are going to have time to think about which sessions that you want to attend. So if you've been to a conference before, or this is your first time coming, typically conferences, you have different sessions. So let's say you have session 1, you may have 3 options to choose from. So the 3 options would be 3 different employers. You can't see all 3 on that certain time slot, let's say from 3 to 3:15. So you're gonna have to choose which employer whose breakout room you want to attend. So you'll get that agenda before so you can mark who you want to see, so that when you join the day of, you're going to be joining our main breakout room. Now, what we will need for you to do is that, let's say that first session, each session is going to be 15 minutes. So that first session will be from 3 to 3:15. When you log into the main breakout room, you're going to come in and then we're going to ask for you to rename yourself with the session that you want to go to. So an example of this with the picture on the right, if you haven't renamed yourself before, when you click on if you see your name on Zoom, you'll see a little drop-down menu, and that's from the drop-down menu, there's a rename option. You'll still keep your name, but let's say we have session 1 where there's company 1, company 2, company 3. And you're like, I want to go to company 1. We'll ask you to write company 1 next to your name so that me and my colleague, when we do the breakout rooms, we can send you to company 1 to hear their presentation and then ask them questions. Now, what we do ask is that you make sure that you come prepared with what companies you want to talk to, and that you're very careful with the numbers that you put. How Zoom works is that, let's say if you put company 1 and we send you there and you're like, no, I don't want to talk to this company, or maybe I meant company 3. If you come back to the main Zoom room, we can't send you during that session. You'd have to wait to the next session to go to that next employer. But once we break you out into the sessions, you'll have 15 minutes with the employer. Once those 15 minutes are done, you'll come back into the main breakout room, and then we're going to go to session 2, where you'll tell us again, now I want to go see company 4, and you'll switch your name. So really for year end, your biggest tasks are, 1, just making sure you know which companies you want to speak to, and then updating your screen name each time you come back into the main Zoom room so we can send you to the right breakout room you want to go to. Any questions about this part?
I think students have a question, like, how do they know which employers are going to be there ahead of time so that they can prepare which breakout rooms they should be going to?
Yeah, so great question. So I'll be emailing a conference agenda to all health and HDFS students the week of. But in a couple of slides, I'll also show you on our website. We'll be posting next week which employers are coming. But I'll show you where you can look on our website too to see which employers are coming to do that research beforehand.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
No, no problem. So some virtual tips that you're attending an information session or a conference online. With online, I know it's really easy to be more relaxed, but we want to engage, we want to connect with these different organizations and employers. So I want you to not only be professional, I want you to feel professional when you're at this conference. So first things first, I'm going to highly recommend you to keep your camera on. I know this is an information session and it's really easy to keep it off. But again, we want to establish those connections. And it's easier if someone can see your face and engage with you to establish that. So when you do that, you want to first make sure that all your equipment, technology is up to date. So make sure you test your lighting. If you're attending the public health session, it's going to be from 3 to 5. So I know definitely in Houston, the sun is out and about that day. So a little trick with lighting, you always want windows behind your camera. If you have the window behind you, typically it's going to blur out your screen and then you won't be easy to see as well. Also check your internet. Make sure you're in a good spot where you know you get great internet connection, and the sound before. You want to be able to speak to the employer and ask them questions. So make sure that you test that beforehand. Try and be in a quiet space by yourself. I know this can be a challenge, especially if you have roommates, family, kids, pets. There's a lot of maybe different individuals who are in your household, but as much as you can, try to find a space where maybe there's as minimal distractions as possible and then where there's maybe not a lot of background noise. And be propped up in a chair. I've been seeing this a lot where people have been laying on beds or maybe laying on the floor while they're listening to workshops. And it's not going to put you in a professional light, right? So make sure that you are propped up on a chair. If you can, if you don't have a desk, that's okay. But if you can makeshift something so that your screen is eye level, that's probably going to be more comfortable for you. But again, it's also going to put that professional stance as well. I am going to recommend for you to dress professionally. And I know sometimes students are like, Donna, they're only going to see me from like shoulders up. There's a lot of psychology that goes behind dressing professionally. A lot of studies have shown that when you dress professionally, it puts you in a professional mindset and it also gives you a boost of confidence. I want you to be confident the day of the conference, talking to the employers and asking them questions. So I am going to suggest to dress business casual. That could be a long sleeve button up. It could be a blazer as well if you want to, but I would not recommend a t-shirt, anything that you wouldn't go to a career fair in. Be mindful of your nonverbal. Since your screen will be on, it is really easy if, let's say, you're not engaged in the conversation, if you're leaning or you're making faces, or you're getting distracted with technology, or you're checking your emails or checking your phone, the employer is going to notice that. And again, we're trying to make these impressions and establishing these relationships. So be mindful of the nonverbals you have. Engage and ask questions. So how you're going to ask questions is you're going to do your research on the employers beforehand. So I know someone had the question of, how do I know which employers are coming? I'm going to show you in a list in a second of the employers that we have so far. We're just waiting on some final confirmations. But I'll also show you where you can find the updated list on our website, which will be posted next week. But you do want to research the company. You want to see, do they already have their internship listed on their website? What are their mission and values? What does the company do? All that will help generate some questions that you could ask at the end of the information session to connect with the employer. And then most importantly, follow up and apply to the position. Like any relationship building, it can't be a two-way street. So you can get all this information, but if you don't do anything with it or you don't follow up, it's just going to stay there. So make sure that at the end of the presentation, if the employer says, hey, we have our position on Cougar Pathway, go apply. Make sure you go apply on Cougar Pathway. Maybe they say, hey, the position's on our company website. Make sure you go to that company website and see. Or they may say, email us. So if they say email us, you'll send a follow-up email with your documents. When you send that follow-up email, you want to be concise but detailed. You don't want your email to be 4 or 5 paragraphs long because a lot of people don't have that time to read that many paragraphs, but you don't want it to be too vague where they don't know who you are. So first off, start off with your name and your major and that you go to U of H. Also talk about the position you're interested in. Even though let's say that you want to apply for the research position at MD Anderson, this person may be coordinating a couple of different internships, and they may not know which one you want to apply for. So be specific about that. And then mention that you listened or you connected with them at the Health and HDF Internship Conference. So just to give you an example, you could say something like, thank you for sharing information at the Health and HDF Internship Conference about the program. Now, what can take your email to the next level is if you can connect something that the employer said to a skill or a quality you have. That shows that you were paying attention, but more importantly, it puts that connection about why you would be a good fit for the internship. So something you could say, I appreciated learning more about the collaborative environment of the internship. I work in a team environment at the Health Student Association organization as vice president, where I've coordinated 3 volunteer events with other officers. So short, quick, to the point, but we made that connection about what skills and qualities we have that connect to that internship. You can close it by saying, attaches my resume and cover letter. Please let me know if you need any additional materials. So short, to the point. But what I see is a lot of times students may say, attaches my resume and cover letter for the position. And that's not giving that person enough detail to know what position, who you are. So make sure you're including these different kinds of components so they get a full picture and then they want to read your resume and cover letter. Okay, so now we're getting to the part of who's coming. So I am going to come to the chat for a second. So because you all are attending, I'm going to give you get the inside scoop into who is potentially coming. So I'm going to upload a PDF to the chat. I do want to preface this is not the final list. There are some employers we're still trying to confirm with, but you can take this list to get an idea of what employers are coming. And then when we upload it to our website, which I'll show you in a second, what the list will look like. So I sent it in the chat, but this is what the list looks like right now. What you'll notice for the codes right now, don't worry about the codes because these may change depending on if the employers confirm and if we get more employers. But what you'll have is that the list will have the company name, company description, website, and then what kind of opportunity that they're going to have. And we're going to have this for both HGFS and the health majors. Now, what your role is, I'm going to switch is that next week when we finalize this list, you can come to students, attend an event, and then under Health and HGFS conference, once the list is finalized, we'll have a link here. Usually it says employer list that you'll be able to click here and see the finalized list. So before you go to the conference, make sure that you check that list. I'll be sending the link also through emails, but just make sure that you're checking that list beforehand to get a final confirmation of who's coming. Hopefully I'll see by next Wednesday with stuff. Now, what your task is when you get that list, again, we want to do that research beforehand. So I pulled up one of the companies who potentially is coming, WHEM, West Houston Assistance Ministries. You want to pull up their website, really read through it. I know sometimes we say like, oh, I read through the website, but we really just skim through it. Really take time to see what are they involved in? What kind of mission statement words are they using? I'm seeing here that they're doing the Chevron Houston Marathon virtually. That could be an easy conversation starter. Maybe one of the questions you ask them after they present and say, hey, I saw on your website that you do the Chevron Houston Marathon. Are there any other volunteer opportunities that you do with your organization? You may also see that their internship programs are already listed. With a lot of the internship programs, sometimes they have it under volunteer experience. But even if you're like, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to fill out this volunteer form or maybe do another kind of application for the internship, you can still get a look here to see, even with the volunteer opportunities, what kind of things could someone who wants to get involved in this organization do? And I would even in this case look at the volunteer application, because I'm going to assume a lot of the questions that they may ask you as an intern may be similar. So tell me about your previous volunteer work. Why do you want to volunteer with WEM? These are all things that they may ask you for an intern. And then you can see different kinds of areas here that you could potentially volunteer in, but it also may be areas you could do your internship in. So you can spend that time looking on the website, write down your questions. So the great thing about being online is that you can have your paper with your questions and things you want to follow up with. So at the end of the information session, when let's say WEM says any questions, you can start to build them up and then make that connection with the employer. Cool. But any questions about looking for the employers, the list? I'm going to jump back to. Cool. So I'm going to jump back to the presentation, because now we're going to talk about, now that I've done my research, how can I start getting my documents ready? You won't, most likely you're not going to give me your documents during the conference, but again, you'll be following up with the employer and you want to have your documents ready to go in case the employer is like, hey, send me your resume, we're going to be taking applications for the next couple weeks. You want to get this part done already so you're not having to worry about it after the conference.
Hey, Donna, sorry to interrupt. Students are asking in the chat if you're going to send the PDF in the chat.
Yeah, did it go through?
I don't think so. I don't see it, and I don't think the other students see it as well.
Yeah, let me send it.
Okay, I think I got it.
Okay, perfect. And I just saw a question. Will the YouTube link for the recording be sent out to our emails? I can send it to Zara and then the link so she can send it out to the students who RSVP'd and to the members.
Yes, we can do that for y'all.
And let's see. And then what I'll do too is I'll also send the list to Zara as well to send out to y'all if it's not coming out in the chat. But I will be sending an email out to all health and HDFS majors. So I do send it through a Cougar Pathway email. So if you, for any reason, have decided not to receive Cougar Pathway emails, I would suggest updating that preference on Cougar Pathway because you'll receive an email from us with the finalized list. I'll also be sending it to the Health Student Association so they can send it out as well. So you'll just have a couple of different areas to get it from, but it'll also be posted on our website.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and I know some of you guys can't access it. I can access it right now, but we'll go ahead and email that to y'all as well as the link to the recording.
Perfect. Great questions. So some resume tips. So when you're creating your resume, a lot of times people want to send the same resume to the same internship. Typically, when you meet with us, we're going to recommend for you to customize your resume to that internship, even for that full-time position. The reason why is because maybe not so much for your internships, but for full-time roles, a lot of companies have applicant tracking systems. If you haven't heard of that system before, it's usually an online software where the human resource department scans resumes for a position. They first use that software to see how much is that resume, like the job description that we have on file. So you could be a great fit for the position, but if you're not using the keywords and not customizing it to the job description, you may not make it to the next round of that HR individual actually getting to look at your resume. Even if someone is looking at your resume and you're not going through an applicant tracking system, a lot of times people are trained to be like that software, to see how much are you like the job description that we have posted. So that's why you really want to customize to make sure that when someone's reading your resume, they see that you're a good fit for that internship or job. So we want to tailor the resume to the company and job description. We want it to be one page and presentable. Now, if you have done a lot of volunteer experience or have a lot of diverse experience, you can have 2 pages. I typically recommend it the second page as at least half a page, then go ahead and have it. But if you only have like a couple lines on the second page, then make sure you condense it to 1 page. But if you have 2 pages, make sure your most relevant information is on the first page, because people's eyes are naturally going to gravitate to the first page, and usually it's to that top half as well. Choose fonts and bullet points that are appealing but easy to read. I get this question too about the more modern templates. So the templates that have colors, graphs, let's say my name starts with a D, like a fancy D that's on a corner. What I tell students is that if you know you are going to hand your resume to someone, and your resume with that sort of modern template looks personal, professional, then go ahead and have it. But if you're having to upload it online, I would really recommend for you to stick to a more traditional format because of the applicant tracking system. A lot of the times that system can't read graphs or any kind of extra bars or something that may be on those templates. So sometimes it causes an error on your resume and your resume doesn't even get to be read because it doesn't even make it to that second round. So you can have the more modern templates, but I would really recommend only doing that if you're physically handing your resume to someone. You want it to be action oriented, so we'll talk about bullet points, but we do recommend bullet points versus paragraphs, just because they're easier to read. When someone's reviewing your resume, usually they're spending maybe, if you're lucky, 30 seconds on the resume, but typically it's less. So you want to make it as easy as possible for them to review your information and get that understanding of why you're a good fit. And you want it to be filled with accomplishments. So of course you want to talk about the tasks that you did in your different experiences, but you also want to show your accomplishments as well, of what you've done to maybe better an organization, better your job, or to go above and beyond. So we have a sample resume on our website. So when you go to uh.edu/UCS, under students, our first link is Get Resume Support. And this will be our resume guide right here. I like to call it a guide because you do not have to follow this to a T. If you have a different format, template you like to use and it looks professional, you can definitely do it. My only recommendation for templates is that I'd be really careful to make sure that it's easy to move around later down the line. If you've ever used a template, sometimes they're really hard to move around, and the first time you do it, it may be fine, but your resume is a living document, so it's always going to be updating and changing. So if it's hard to maneuver, and you got to add different sections or you got to move sections around, it's going to be really challenging and it's probably just going to frustrate you. So if you do like a template, but it's not easy to maneuver, I typically recommend for students, just create it on Word. That way you have the power to move things around, and you have more of that flexibility. So many of you may say, well, I haven't had maybe direct experience yet. So what can I put in my resume for an internship? So you do have direct experience. A lot of your experience probably is going to come from your class projects or the courses that you've taken. So you can have a relevant coursework section and a project section on your resume. So what the coursework section would look like is you could list upper division courses that would be related for the internship. So I wouldn't list, let's say, history, English, anything that's a basic course, I would list more of your public health courses, and you just have to list the name. So if it's epidemiology, for instance, you would just list that name. You wouldn't have to put the course number. With projects, these could be any projects you've done in class, with the group, by yourself, that would be again related to the internship. I know one project that the public health students do, I think in conjunction with engineering, is the sidewalk project, where you all go to a different area and test to see how accessible that sidewalk is for individuals. That's a project you could easily talk about in your resume. So you could write the project name, and then you could write 3 to 5 bullet points on what you did for that project. So now we're going to jump to experience. So experience is important to have on your internship resume. Now, your experience doesn't have to be work experience. It can be organization experience, leadership experience, volunteer experience, but you do want to include the experiences that you've done as an undergrad that can show the skills that you can take to the internship. Now you'll notice I said undergrad. Typically, if you are a sophomore, we're going to recommend for you to remove any high school information from your resume, because at that point, employers want to see what have you done as a undergraduate student. So with your experience, you can have different section titles. If you have volunteer, work experience, leadership experience, all those can be different section titles. And then how you're going to organize those experiences is, let's say we have that you volunteered at the food bank. So you could have a volunteer experience. Then you're going to put your position title. You could say volunteer. Then the organization name, Houston Food Bank. And then you're going to put the dates. Maybe you're a longtime volunteer and you do this every weekend. So you can put the month and year you started till present. Maybe you had started volunteering and had to stop with COVID. That's okay. You would just put the month and year you ended. So under each experience section, you always want to list your experiences in reverse chronological order, or most recent experience first. But under that, you're going to write 3 to 5 action-oriented bullet points. What the action-oriented mean is that you're going to start off with a verb. So nowhere in your resume where you write I, me, my. You start off straight with a verb. You're going to talk about the task that you did. And if you can, you're going to add a result. So a way you can add a result is making sure that you add details to the bullet point. So let's say if I did a bullet point for the Houston Food Bank, I may say something like managed a team of 4 to box 100 boxes for local elementary school. So I can see I added that number component. I can see how many boxes I built. I can see I managed a team. But it would have been different, right, if I would have been more vague and just said put boxes together. That wouldn't give that employer that much information. So you want to make sure that your bullet points are that detailed and concise. They have enough information that the employer knows what you did, but they're not too long that they're almost a paragraph form. Now, in some of your experiences, you probably do more than 3 to 5 bullet points worth of task. So how you decide which bullet points you want to include depends on the internship. Maybe for an internship, you may be doing more program planning. So then you're concentrating your bullet points on more skills that match that. Maybe for another position, though, maybe it's more education based. Maybe you're going out and doing presentations. So your bullet points, then you want to choose the ones that match that internship more. That's how you also customize your resume as well. And with the bullet points, you want to try to use different verbs. If you're no longer in the position, the verbs will be in the past tense. If you're still in the position, the verbs will be in the present tense. But you don't want to use like help, 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 assist, assist throughout all the bullet points. You want to make sure you diversify those bullet points. And how you can do that is you can also look at the internship description and see what keywords that they're using that you can add to those bullet points. So just some different ways that you can make impactful bullet points. So using industry-specific buzzwords, action-oriented language, and then the details. So just some examples. If I said responsible for raising funds on a bullet point, an employer may have questions, right? Like what kind of funds, why you were responsible, how much did you raise? But if we follow those formats of adding those details, I could redo it to say formulated a campaign with 6 volunteers to assist with tsunami relief, raising over $1,100 by holding a date auction. So I see the detail, I can see how much I raised, but more importantly, I can see some other great skills. I can see that I can manage a team of 6, and maybe that's something that in the internship, maybe that supervisor really values, but would have known that if they didn't add that detail into there. One more example, so this is really common, especially if you work on campus, answering the phones. So instead of just saying answered phones, it could be something managed switchboard with 10 incoming lines, receiving and routing an average of 500 calls per day. If I'm an internship supervisor and I know that I need someone who's quick and maybe can multitask and is fast, seeing that, like especially answering 500 calls per day, I can see that you're probably really good at going from task to task and being able to manage that. So that's the power of the bullet points. The experience section is typically the first section where the supervisor's eyes are going to go to. So you want to make sure that when you are creating your resume, this is the section that you're spending a lot of time with, making sure that it's customized for that internship. Yeah, and then cover letter tips. So with cover letters, these are usually dependent on the organization. I would say it really is 50-50. Some organizations require it, some don't. My rule is that if they don't require it, but if you want to send it, you can send it as long as it is customized. If it is a general cover letter, it's not going to have that same impact. And then you're just going to be wasting time that you could maybe dedicated to applying for other internships. So if it is not required, but you want to customize the cover letter, definitely send it. If it is required, you do need to customize it. So the difference between the resume and cover letter is that the cover letter is going to go more into detail into 1 to 2 skills that you can bring to the internship. Now, you want the internship to be a good fit for you, but the internship site also wants to make sure that you're a good fit for them as well. And this is where you can go more into that detail. So typically the first paragraph is a introduction. So you're introducing yourself, maybe telling them how you found out about the position. Now the second and third paragraphs, those are the ones that typically change the most when you customize, depending on which skill you want to highlight to that internship. Maybe an internship, again, you're going to be doing presentations. So like I really want to highlight my communication skills. That paragraph 2, you'll talk about your communication skills, but more importantly, you're going to provide a specific example where you showcase those communication skills. So the one on the cover letter here says, over the past 3 years, I have developed this skill while working as a tutor for X organization. Within my role, I met one-on-one with students and provided them support regarding Calculus 1 homework and exam questions. I had to learn to communicate with students and provide them examples that worked for different learning styles. So we can see here that this person used a specific example, and we can see that communication skill. Now, what we don't want to do is that we don't want this to be a repeat of the resume, or we don't want this just to be a list of skills. Because you could say, like, I have communication skills, I have leadership skills, I have organization. But since they don't directly know you, the employer won't really know, do you have those skills? So that's why it's important to provide that specific example to really showcase, yes, I have this skill and this is when I used it. Now, when we go to paragraph 3, this is where you'll write about a different skill as it relates to the internship. Now, when you look on the internship description, most of the time they're going to have responsibilities, duties, and from there you can get a good sense of maybe what are those 1 to 2 skills that they really want to see in the interns. And then same thing with paragraph B. You'll talk about the skill and then talk about a specific time or example you use that skill. And then closing with paragraph 4, really is just your conclusion. So you can just say, thank you for taking the time to read the cover letter. If you need any more information, let me know. And then I look forward to hearing from you. So paragraph 1 and paragraph 4 don't change that much, but paragraph 2 and paragraph 3 will, again, depending on what skills are needed for that internship.
Donna, I think there's a question that kind of relates to this from some of the questions people submitted earlier on our forum. I think it kind of relates to when applying for internships, what, like, if they require, references, or like maybe somebody to write like a reference for you, who would be the best person for that, and how would you approach maybe a professor or someone that could write that recommendation for you?
Yeah, so if the internships that you're applying for asks for a recommender, first you need to see, are they asking for a specific type of recommender? They may ask for, let's say, I want to see someone who is your science professor or public health professor. So see first if they want a specific person. If they don't, if they leave it more open, just say, I just need someone to write a letter recommendation or someone to be your reference. Then it really can be open, but I would choose individuals who can either, one, talk about your academics or talk about your work ethic. So before you even approach your recommenders, I would make sure you get the information needed from the internship site on how they want to either, one, contact the recommender, or if they want the recommender to provide any written information. So just to give you an example, if people ask for a letter recommendation, typically that means that your recommender is going to be writing something. It used to be that the recommenders would write, let's say, a letter, give it to you, and then you would send it off. Nowadays, a lot of programs have online portals where you put your recommender's information, and then they'll send the recommender a link to fill out their recommendation on a separate web page. That is if they're asking for a letter recommendation. Now, they may just ask for a reference. Now, they're asking for a reference. Typically, you're just going to be providing name, email, contact information, and then that internship coordinator is actually going to call that letter reference and have a verbal conversation. So I would get that information beforehand because you want to tell your recommender what to expect. So when you reach out and let's say you decide, you know what, like I really spent a lot of time volunteering at the food bank, and that person who coordinates, they've really seen my work ethic and seen what a great job I've done, I'm going to reach out to them. I would send them an email and let them know that, hey, I'm applying for this internship site. I'm asking you to be a letter of recommendation or a reference, and then give them the steps of what that would look like. And I also usually recommend for students to include their resume attached to the email. The reason for that is because you can actually pinpoint to certain parts of your resume, maybe other areas that you want them to highlight in that letter recommendation, or when they're having that conversation with the internship coordinator. Now, the only people I would not recommend asking for a reference or letter recommendation, any professor you did not do well in the class, any professor that maybe you never interacted before, you just took the class, or anyone that like met you once and you had a good relationship. Even though you had a good relationship, if you've only met that person once, they're not going to be able to write you or speak to that internship coordinator a lot in detail. What ends up happening is that if you get someone who met you once or a professor who really doesn't know you, they may say, yeah, I'll write the letter recommendation or be a reference, but it's going to be really general and it's not going to really add value to your application. So my biggest advice, make sure that you're connecting with individuals who you know can really write detailed letters recommendations or can speak highly of you when they're talking to that internship coordinator.
Thank you. That was perfect.
And this is just a summary of the cover letter tips. So again, tailor to each opportunity, focus 2 to 3 of your experiences to that internship site. And basically making sure it's just not a paragraph version of your resume, that you're adding more context into there. So I know I've been talking about the Koo Careers YouTube channel. So when you go to YouTube and you go to Koo Careers, or you can also go to our website, and then on our social media links, you can click the YouTube link. This is going to take you to the channel. I'm creating a specific playlist for the College of Education. So when you go to the playlist, this is where I'll actually upload this presentation today. I'll upload it to the College of Education, but we also have workshops on all different topics that are also posted on the YouTube channel. So let's say you're like, hey, I want a little bit more information about resume. You can go to the resume workshop and view it. We also have the cover letter one that's attached to the resume, interviewing a lot of different topics that you can continue to check out through the videos.
Sorry to interrupt, Donna. Somebody asked in the chat, how long are the references good for? And can you use a current reference within the next few years? And like, how often should that be updated as well?
Yeah, so I would say references, again, it goes back to what kind of way they would submit that letter recommendation or that reference. Usually, I would say if someone's going to be a reference where they're verbally speaking to that employer, it may, I would say maybe 6 months. A year would be pushing it. I say that because a lot of the times people after a year, it may be harder for them to speak about what you did in that role. Especially if you haven't had communication with them before. So I would say if they're calling, a year tops, but you want to make sure that you're still in communication. Now, they're having to write a letter of recommendation, let's say for graduate school. I would say probably the same 6 months to a year. Graduate school gets a little bit tricky because I know sometimes individuals may work after they graduate for a couple of years. If you're not keeping in contact with the professors, and let's say it's been 4 years, I probably would not reach out to them for that recommendation because, again, it's going to be hard for them to speak about what you did or remember who you were in that class. So that's why you really want to make sure that you build relationships with people who are in the field and stay connected with them. Because when you build those relationships and you keep in contact, you have a better chance of them being able to remember all the great work that you did. But yes, there usually is a cap to it. I don't know if that person had a specific year or number of years they were thinking about, but if they did, they can write it in the chat. But I would say usually you want your references and letters of recommendation to be within that year of meeting each other and them knowing your work.
A question that I saw a lot in the submissions were different options for health careers and what students can get involved in for health in the Houston area and different opportunities that can help them find careers.
Yeah, so I think with health, it sort of depends on what type of health you want to do. So I think that's the first question. I think the wonderful thing about health is there's a lot of different pathways into it. You could do more direct patient care, which would be doctor, pharmacist, nurse, physician assistant, anywhere where you're working more hands-on with patients. But then you have the public health side of it too. I like to call it sometimes the behind the scenes where you're still making an impact, but maybe you're not working directly with patients. Maybe you're doing more of the program planning where you're doing events to teach people healthy lifestyles, or the management side where you're running a clinic or office. One great resource is a free website called Healthcare Pathways. I usually use that resource when I'm working with students. I really like it because it breaks up healthcare into different sectors: direct patient care, research, healthcare management, these different areas. And when you click into the different areas, it will give you a list of occupations that connect to that section. So it's nice to do a little bit of research and exploration. Typically from there, let's say if you narrow down a couple of different health options, I think the next big thing is getting experience. Experience can look like volunteering at a hospital, or volunteering with a certain population that you're interested in working with. It could even be just reaching out to someone who, let's say, is a community health worker. And you're like, I've been reading about this. I want to know more information. You could do what we call an informational interview, where you would reach out to that person to ask questions about how they got to where they are. So you wouldn't ask for an internship or job. You would reach out and ask questions such as, what does your day-to-day look like? What are some of the challenges of your role? What advice would you recommend for an undergraduate student about experience to get or next steps? So that can be really powerful because, one, you're learning information directly from the source. I always tell people that those people working the field are always the best people to get information from, because sometimes what we learned in school looks a little bit different than what it looks like in the real world setting. So you're getting firsthand experience and knowledge from someone who's doing that job, and you're building a relationship. So you're building a relationship, and you can potentially also ask them if they can connect you to other people in the field to continue building the relationship and to continue gaining knowledge. If you are looking for experience, start on Cougar Pathway. But if you're having trouble finding a particular kind of experience, or you're even thinking about maybe creating a specific internship or volunteer opportunity, you can always connect with me, and then we can talk more about how you can approach that situation.
Thank you. I see another question here that says, what is your opinion if freshmen should attend this event, and should they gain a lot of experience out of this if they attend early on?
Yeah, so I think as freshmen, I think it is really beneficial to attend the event. One, like I said, it's never too early to start getting experience. So even though you may not be taking your internship class till your senior year, that's not to say that you can't get an internship your sophomore year and continue building up on that experience and just having a lot of experience to add to your future applications. So I think it is really beneficial. Also, too, since you are not maybe currently in the market for an internship, it's a nice entryway to see, like, what does this look like? So that when it is your time to come and you're looking for an internship, and whether when it's your time we're in person or we're still online, this won't be new for you. So it actually takes a little bit more of the pressure off because it's not a requirement. You're actually getting to see, like, what does this look like, and also gaining knowledge into a field.
Great, thank you. I think another question that has been on a lot of people's minds, from what I can see here, is that a lot of people are wondering, like, are these internships, most of the employers that are coming out, will they be doing like online type of internships for the coming, I don't know, few months, or will it be like in person, or does it just depend?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. It is just going to depend on the internship site and how they're structuring it.
Mhm.
I know some internship coordinators have transitioned their programs to be virtual. Some
Mhm.
others, just depending on their need, actually may need in person. So those are great questions to ask during the information session. So when they may actually naturally say, like, we've moved everything virtually, or you'll meet in person. But if maybe you're someone who's like, maybe I would prefer to do it virtual, maybe you could connect with them after and say, hey, I'm really interested in this internship. I'm interested in maybe doing it virtual. Could we have a conversation about that to see if there's opportunities to do that?
Okay, great. Says, I'm about to start applying for master's programs, and I'm interested to learn about some tips you might have, how I can gain some experience, um, and some resume etiquette, which we already kind of went over. But if you have anything for that, that'd be great.
So for your master's programs, I would say if you're, let's say, graduating in May but haven't gotten experience yet, you still have, I would say, depending on the deadline for the master's program, maybe a couple months to get experience to write on your application. Now, if your application's, let's say, due in December, but you don't have a lot of content to put on there, I think that has to be a personal decision to decide, like, do I want to go ahead with my application or do I want to wait? So there is options to take gap years. What a gap year would look like is that you would wait a year for to see if you were accepted into the next cycle, and during that year you can gain experience volunteering in a full-time job. that you can talk more about in your application itself. So when you're applying for graduate school, I tell students really look at your application. If you feel strong about it and feel like this is, like I have all those different components that I want to show to the committee, then submit it. If you're looking at though and not thinking that you have the strongest application, or you want to add more content, then you can think about that gap year or even working for a couple of years. So it is not mandatory to start graduate school right after you graduate. That really comes down to yourself, what's going on in your life, what your immediate need is. Do you want to start grad school right away, or do you want to take some time to work? But you have a couple of different options. So I don't like people to think like, oh, if I don't apply now, I'll never go. You have different ways you can get to graduate school, but you just want to make sure that your application is as strong as it can be.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. Somebody in the chat just asked, are some of these internships paid?
So some of the internships, when you look on the list, some of them may be paid. I'm going to say very few are probably going to be paid though, because a lot of the internships for health and HDFS, because it's academic credit based, they typically tend to go unpaid. Now, what I have seen students do is, let's say if they're working at a clinic and they want to continue their internship hours at the clinic. This you have to talk more to Dr. Solari Williams, because she's the internship coordinator for public health. But I have seen students in the past where they were able to do work at that same clinic, but maybe do a different task to meet the requirements of the internship, and then also do more hours above their clinic hours to get their practicum or internship hours. And do something that way so that they're getting paid in their full-time role, and maybe they're still getting paid doing the extra internship hours. It will be dependent on the internship site, but I would say for the most part they tend to go unpaid.
Okay, great. I don't think we have any more questions, but if anybody has any questions, you guys can go ahead and ask. But I don't want to take any much more time out of y'all's day. We kind of had to go over due to the technical difficulties. But I wanted to say thank you to Career Counselor Donna Justice for coming out today and doing this presentation. I can see that a lot of people are gaining a lot of good information out of this. And one member just said in the chat too, like, this was such an informative presentation. So we really appreciate you coming out and giving us like some tips and some sneak peek on what's going to happen on November 12th. And hopefully we'll all be ready for that. But thank you so much for doing this for us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad I was able to speak to everyone. And then if you have any questions, you can always reach out. Sarah can send my email out to everyone as well, but you can always schedule an appointment with me, send me an email, especially if you have questions about the internship conference. But I look forward to working with each and every one of you, and then we'll be sending the information for YouTube, the employers out, so you'll have that ready to go before November 12th.
Yes, we will send that out for sure by tomorrow. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you guys, all of you all who attended, and hopefully this was very informative and helpful for you guys. Thank you.